no gas company did, their investment decision based on the kind of prices we're seeing right now because of the war. So I don't buy this, oh well, if you tax us, when the prices are higher than their wildest dreams, we're going to walk away. But I think we should have a stable regime where they go, in normal circumstances, we're paying a reasonable level of tax. If the prices go really high because of things like a war overseas, well, that's how much is shared with the Australian community changes.
Allegra Spender, welcome to The Business.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Prime Minister has unveiled a suite of COVID-style support. Is a fossil fuel windfall tax necessary to pay for that?
Look, I think we should be bringing in a fossil fuel windfall tax, particularly on the tax on the sale of gas right now. We've seen that price for gas has really almost doubled during this war. And that means that our exports are earning much more for the companies who are getting their major profits for it, but they're not being, I think, shared appropriately with the Australian people. Because when it's a war-driven price spike, it should be shared with the Australian people in a way that is not as the sort of normal spirit of events.
The Prime Minister has signalled he's pushing ambitious budget reform. Is a fossil fuel windfall tax on that agenda, do you think?
I don't know, and I think frankly they should bring it, I think they shouldn't wait till the budget, honestly. But I think it could be where they certainly seem more open to, I think, tax on gas than I've seen them before. But I think that they should be moving now on this because I think it matters right now. And I think what it is, it would give them actually greater scope to take action on other areas of the economy which do need, I think, greater support.
So does the war in Iran and the current geopolitical climate provide more impetus for a windfall tax? Does it have the support of the electorate?
I think there is actually broad support for Australians getting fair return on their resources. And I think this is both a short-term problem and a longer-term problem. In the short term, we have a war. This is driving price spikes, particularly in gas. And, and Australians are feeling it in what they pay in petrol. And I think in this situation, therefore, it makes a lot of sense for the Australian community to capture more of those benefits. But in the long term, I don't think that our resource tax structures actually deliver value for Australians, particularly, when there are volatile price movements. Back in the 1990s, for every dollar of oil and gas that was exported overseas, the Australian taxpayer used to get about 30 cents. Now we get about 7 cents in the dollar. So it has changed over time, and I think we should reset our structure for our taxation of resources, both for the resources we do now, but also making sure as we develop critical minerals that we do have the right tax settings for Australians. And that's a part of the work I'm doing, developing white paper on resource taxing in the longer term as well as in the short term.
Well, this week, gas producers pushed back strongly on the idea of a windfall tax, saying it could make Australia uncompetitive and drive away investment. What's your view?
I think that's why it's important to structure taxes appropriately, because we do need to be a country which in the long term can attract investment in the development of our resources. It is really important. But we also know that no gas company did, their investment decision based on the kind of prices we're seeing right now because of the war. So I don't buy this, oh well, if you tax us, when the prices are higher than their wildest dreams, we're going to walk away. But I think we should have a stable regime where they go, in normal circumstances, we're paying a reasonable level of tax. If the prices go really high because of things like a war overseas, well, that's how much is shared with the Australian community changes. So I think if we can bring in those right structures now, but that they can also endure and be stable, I think we will be better set up for the long term.
Have you spoken to big gas companies? And if so, what have they told you?
I had some of this conversation this week actually explicitly with Woodside about different models of taxation. And, we had a discussion about these very issues, and I was pretty, they made their case in terms of the investment, but I also said, well, did you really expect the prices of gas to be at the level that they currently are when you made those investment decisions? And I think the truth is that what gas company really did make those decisions based on current prices? They didn't. I think this is an important issue in relation to social licence, and it is an important piece that every piece of gas that is sold, every critical mineral that is sold, that is actually just a part of Australia that we're not going to get back.
The Select Committee on the Taxation of Gas Resources reports on the 7th of May. From your discussions in the halls of Canberra, what are you hearing? Will it get across the line?
I think it's actually a bit of a close call at the moment, and I think that's why community pressure is really important, because I think the community has changed a lot since the sort of mining tax sort of scare campaign of of over a decade ago. I think the community is really concerned that we aren't getting a fair share of the resources that we have, and I think at the same time the community does understand and respect that resources and the sort of development of resources is an important part of the Australian economy. I believe we need to be able to do both. We need to be able to continue to develop our resources like critical minerals and do that and give overseas investors certainty, but we also need to make sure that when the times are really good for some of our gas companies and others, for things that are completely outside of their control, that the Australian community better shares in the value.
Allegra Spender, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.